Hey guys, so I just wanted to make a quick video to give you a quick update on what I've been working on for the past few days and also give you a tour of this little minimal home studio I've been working on, so let's get into it. Alright, the first thing is for the last few days I've been working on this new iOS app which hopefully will come out soon, and I'll definitely let you guys know. It's going to be sort of a noise generator, texture looper, sound design tool. So yeah, I'm still working out the quirks there and fixing some bugs, and as soon as it's up I'll let you guys know. And that's been taking up a lot of my time, so you may have seen a gap in videos and I may be posting less frequently because usually when I get into programming projects I get sucked in and that's all I think about, so the videos take a bit of a break. But I'm going to try to do a bit of a balance so that maybe I spend my mornings working on videos, maybe nights on the app, and we'll see. I'm still trying to find a balance there. The other thing I've been working on is building up this new studio. As you can see behind me, this is the first time where I've actually invested in acoustic panels, which is something everybody tells you to invest in first, monitors and panels before you spend gear, and I've sort of been doing the opposite. I've been spending all my money on just new fancy synths, and that's cool and all, and it's fun to jam on those, but I feel like I haven't been taking my music seriously, and that's something I'm trying to shift this year. Focus more on music and try to get minimal with gear and focus more on kind of quality over quantity, if that makes sense. Alright, so let me just zoom out a little bit and give you a quick panorama of the setup here, and then I'm going to go over the sort of pieces of gear and my thinking behind this general setup. So I'm using these Prime Acoustic London acoustic panels. I've debated going DIY. Usually most people recommend going DIY because it's much less expensive, and I agree. In this case, I feel like I would have spent way more time trying to build the frames and managing the fabrics and finding the insulation and all that, and I didn't want to kind of mess with that. So for my first go around, I decided to kind of splurge a little bit and go with these panels. And one thing I did is I've actually hung them using these 3M command strips, which are these super durable stickers which you can easily remove so they don't leave a stain on your wall once you remove them. And I just wanted to say that because I've been looking online for ways to install these panels without using screws, and it was hard to find information. I found one forum mentioned that these worked, so I decided to try them out, and knock on wood, so far they're hanging pretty well here. And what's cool is that if I do want to remove them one day, hopefully there won't be any stains on the wall and I'll just be able to move them. But basically the way they hang is that there are these little impalers in the back here. So I've basically stuck the impalers onto these stickers, and then you kind of jam these panels onto those impalers. Alright, let me quickly just go over all the pieces of gear I have in here, and you may have noticed there are no synthesizers in here, and that's kind of by design, so I'm going to talk a bit about that at the end. But first, let's just go quickly over the gear here. So the monitors are these Focal Alpha 65s, and they're kind of mid-range monitors, so Focal has way more advanced ones as well. But it's an upgrade from my KRKs, which I have in another room, which I use more for editing. And these I wanted to have in here. So far they've been holding up pretty well. I still haven't put enough hours into them to fully kind of crack them in. So those are the monitors. I have those on stands here, and again they're placed in a kind of equilateral triangle based on this sitting position here. And the important part is that the tweeter here is generally at ear level to when I'm sitting in this middle chair here. So let's move on to the desk here. I have this ViewSonic monitor. I forget what the name is, but again, it doesn't really matter too much. Running Ableton Live, which is my main DAW here. I have a MacBook, which I got from work at a pretty good price. It's a 2014 model, I believe, and it runs things pretty decently. I have this keyboard with some lights and a mouse. Nothing too fancy. I forget the brand. It's something generic. Not too expensive. I can put links in the description if you guys are interested. Some Logitech mouse. I'm using the Arturia keystep here as my main MIDI controller. I'm definitely kind of exploring and might consider getting another keyboard in here. I'm toying with maybe trying the Blofeld up in here because again it's fairly compact and it has a nice 49 key keyboard. So I'm going to try that out, but it might take a bit too much space on the desk here. But anyways, this is mainly my kind of MIDI controller for programming drums and bass and synths and all that. Moving on here, I have these headphones, the Beyer Dynamic DT770 Pro. These are the closed model that they have. And most of the time I'm listening through monitors, so I'm just using this when I'm tracking vocals or something where I just don't want the mic to bleed through the speakers. or when I'm kind of reviewing things on headphones. And then my interface here is the Audient ID22, which might be overkill for this setup here. The ID14 is definitely more than adequate for what I'm using it here. I'm going to show you what I have hooked up in the back here, but I'm using it as a super minimal 2-channel interface. But the audience sounds really great, super clean, nice sound. I used to have the Apogee Duet, and nothing wrong with it. It just had FireWire, so when I changed laptops, it was kind of outdated, so I wanted a nice USB interface. So yeah, I sold the Apogee, and sounds are fairly comparable. So that's it for the desk setup here. There's these 3 drawers here. I don't have anything too fancy in here. Headphones, a tuner for the guitar. Here I have a notepad in case I want to jot down some notes, some mints. And then in here, I believe I have the GoPro, or sorry, not GoPro, Go Mixer Pro from Roland, which I sometimes use to hook up to my iPhone if I want to make Instagram videos or something like that. But yeah, those are just basically what the desk is here. And here I have my iPhone on a little stand. I'm not using this for music. This is mainly for when I'm working on building my apps. It's handy to have on this little stand, so while I'm programming, I can just push things onto that device. So yeah, I'm using this desk as kind of a multi-purpose. Sometimes I'm using it as a music studio. Sometimes I'm using it to program apps, in which case I move this Arturia out of the way. And that's another reason I like it, because it's fairly small, so I can just kind of shove it here on the side of the desk and move the keyboard over. The other thing I wish I had a better setup here, and I'm still trying to work this out, is finding a nice way to have the keyboard, or like the QWERTY keyboard, coexist with the musical keyboard. Because right now I sort of have one or the other. So when I'm playing this, it's comfortable down here. But when I need to type something or do like shortcuts in Ableton, I have to kind of awkwardly reach my hand over. So I'm still trying to find a setup where I can have the keyboard, or the QWERTY keyboard, as accessible as the MIDI keyboard here. So if you guys have any ideas for making those two coexist, definitely let me know. The other thing I can try is just putting the keyboard to the side, but then I feel like I'm stretching my hands too far to the left and right compared to the mouse. So that's one little quirk I'm still trying to iron out here. But for the most part, that's it for the desk here. I'm even considering moving the laptop and the interface on the floor. The only reason I have the interface here is because I can easily flick in the 48 volt phantom power, and also having the volume knob is obviously important to have. But if it wasn't for those two things, I could effectively move the laptop and the interface on the floor so that this desk just has a monitor, keyboard, and a MIDI controller, which would make it even cleaner as a setup here. So moving on to the microphones here. So the two things I have plugged into the Audient, and if you're not familiar, it just has two mic pre's in the back, and you can obviously expand up to 10 inputs with a ADAT interface. But for here, I'm just using these two mics which I've plugged into the XLR here. One is the RE20, which is a classic standard super high quality dynamic mic. And I have that running through this cloud lifter thing. So let me pull that up real quick. All right, so on the floor, I have this cloud lifter thing, which I just brought up temporarily. And this is a nice, clean, it basically just boosts the signal via phantom power. So you just route your XLR from one end to the other, and then you make sure you have phantom power running in your interface. And it's a great thing to have for mics like the SM7B or the RE20, which are these really nice dynamic mics that are not typically the most high in terms of output. And this thing just nicely cleans them and brings the volume way up. So I have that just sitting on the floor here. And then the second channel, I have this small diaphragm condenser, the Octava MK012. And I use that mainly for recording things like acoustic guitar or various percussion, like this kashishi I have sitting over here, and a bunch of different shakers. And the reason they're placed in this awkward looking setup here is that effectively I put them out of the way. So when I'm working on my desk, they're just kind of sitting idly standby in case I need to record something. So if I need to record vocals, I effectively just twist this thing over. I don't know if you can see that. So now it's kind of adjusted to be at my general mouth level when I'm sitting here. So if I need to record some vocals or just random like ad-libs or beatboxing or anything. And then similarly, this one too rotates in the opposite direction. And once they rotate in, they're effectively in an ideal position for recording like singer-songwriter singing and acoustic guitar. So when I'm sitting down here, I can sing into the RE20, and then this Octava one is pointing at my acoustic guitar. But again, I can just twist that around as well if I need to record snares or just random acoustic instruments. But most of the time I have them tucked away if I'm working on more instrumental type music where I don't need microphones. So just kind of rotate those out of the way. Down here I have my P-Bass in case I need to track that. And the ID22 has a convenient DI input in the back, so I could just run a 1/4" cable directly in the back there, run it under the desk, and then just hook it up here. Or if I need to bring in my electric guitar, I can do that as well. And up here on the wall I have this Seagull Merlin, which is kind of this hybrid dulcimer type thing, which has a DAD type tuning. It only has 3 strings, well technically 4, but the last 2 are together like a 12-string guitar. That has a really nice sound, which I sometimes will pull in. All right, that's basically it. So this is the setup again from a long distance view here. So yeah, let me talk a bit about the minimalism of the setup here and what I'm trying to do. And I don't know if this is gonna work. This is just an experiment and something I'm gonna try. And maybe I'll report back in a few months to see if it worked out or not. But effectively what I'm trying to do is create more of an additive approach to the setup here, where I start off with the most minimal thing I can do, which is just a computer and a MIDI controller, acoustic treatment, and monitors. And then I only add or bring in hardware when I feel like I need it. So I feel like in the past, for the longest time, I've just been more into having a studio full of gear and synths, thinking that that would kind of inspire me to play. But I find that more often for me, I get kind of overwhelmed when there's too many options and too many things around me. So I actually prefer having minimal setups, and I found that in the past when I didn't have as much gear, I used to make more music. One of the reasons because I had more time, but the other reason is that I usually had just one synth by my side. I had a computer and a synth, and it was much easier to just make a bass patch, record the bass, make a lead, record the lead, and just keep tracking like that without worrying about which synth to bring in and kind of recalling how certain synths work. And that's sort of what I'm trying to recreate here. So I was actually tempted to selling off a bunch of my synths, but at first I'm going to try this other kind of setup, which I'm trying here is having a setup that in a room that doesn't have any gear in it, so that my mind is kind of free to keep of a minimal state of mind. So I'm only bringing in the gear that I need. And I still have all the synths in the basement. So if, for example, I'm working on something and I think, oh, maybe this could use an SH-101, I can just go grab that synth, bring it in here, and just have that one synth with me, track and make the patches that I need, and then take it out and then continue working, so that I'm selectively and intentionally just picking the gear that I need at a time here without being kind of surrounded by a wall of synths. And for some people that works. For me, it didn't work so far, so I'm just gonna try this. I might easily end up in a couple of weeks just negating everything I'm seeing here, and I might end up with a wall of synths again, but who knows? I'm gonna try this and see how it goes. I've kind of been kicking myself for not making music for the last months or years even. I mean, I've made a few kind of small albums, but I've been spending more time with synths than I have with just sitting down and working on music. And the other thing that kind of sparked this idea here is I recently, a couple of weeks ago, read the entire Ableton Live manual, all 700 pages. And it was actually a really entertaining manual, so I actually recommend you guys do that if you're into Ableton Live. I learned so much from it, and my mind got blown like a couple of times in. I thought I knew the product, but when you actually read through all the different quirks, and it kind of made me realize that I've been using gear and plugins as sort of an excuse for not properly learning how to use the tools that I have. And I think I talked about this a little bit in some of my other videos, but effectively, I'm gonna try doing a minimal setup, not just in terms of the hardware, but also in terms of software. And this is gonna be hard to do, but in the past, I always tend to, every time I feel like I'm missing something in my sound, I tend to look for new plugins to buy. Whereas now I'm gonna try to do a setup where I'm gonna try to focus and use only the stock Ableton plugins as much as possible to some degree. Obviously, if some things don't exist, I'm gonna have to use external plugins, but I'm gonna try to force myself to learn to be better at mixing and even learn mastering, which I've never been good at, and just work better on arrangement and composition and focus more on the output of the music rather than the gear and the plugins that surround it. So I'm gonna see how that goes. I have no idea. I'm just gonna experiment and try to force myself to make music. But like I said in some other videos, well, I have tons of different hobbies and passions, so my mind is kind of racing all over the place. But hopefully this room that I've created here will sort of inspire me to kind of focus on the music itself rather than on what gear or latest plugin to get. And you might see this channel shift more into like a vlog slash beat making, although I don't really make beats, but sort of like a music behind the scenes of just my journey of trying to get better and learn and kind of get back into the craft of music making and just focusing on that every day, rather and less to do with kind of gear stuff. I'll still probably do gear demos and stuff from time to time because it's fun to do, but for me personally, I want to get better at the music side of things as well. So yeah, look forward for that, and hopefully this was an interesting tour. This is probably the least kind of gear centric studio tour out there, and probably not that exciting to watch. The other thing I definitely want to do is do the kind of one synth challenge, where I try to make a track using only one piece of gear, or at least restricting myself to as little gear as possible. And I've said this in other videos as well, and I've kind of been procrastinating, but I promise I will get to it one day. Right now, all my energy is kind of going into this app, so hopefully once that app is out there, I can go back and focus on the music side of things. And yeah, I'll still be doing gear videos for sure, but hopefully not as much as before, or at least not focused purely on the gear, but more the gear in the context of music making. Because yeah, I'm listening to some music I made in the past, I'm kind of cringing at it, and I've tried making music again and I'm sort of cringing at it again. So I definitely need to get back into it and just get into the grind and the routine of just making music every day, even if it sucks, and just hopefully getting better that way. And I'm probably going to vlog and kind of document that process, so hopefully you'll see me on that journey and join me along, and I'm going to share it whether it's good or bad. But yeah, hopefully we'll grow together. Follow me on Instagram. I'm gonna start doing more stories, kind of behind the scenes stuff there, so if you're interested in that, check it out. Alright guys, stay tuned. I'm definitely gonna go back into more of a regular schedule, but right now, like I said, the app is taking up all my time, so when that's live, I'll let you guys know for sure, and then you might see a bit of a bump in as I'm transitioning from more of the kind of tutorial videos and trying to do more of the music making type of content, and just to see what that goes like. Alright, see you guys in the next one.